What's up, guys? Welcome to the UFC St. Louis fight card recap. I'm going to be going over all the fights, what went down, and how we did on our picks. I am pretty late on the video because I've been recovering all day from last night. So, it's better late than never. Let's get into it. Beforehand, though, I did see some great news from Dana White. I don't know if it was at the post-fight press conference, but he spoke about eliminating Apex fight nights from now on. I don't know if that's specifically due to the success at UFC St. Louis and the crowd environment, all that stuff, but that's fantastic news for fight fans. We don't have those quiet, not really impactful crowds at the Apex, to say the least. So I'm really excited about that. Let's go ahead and start talking about these fights. Now, starting off the card was J.J. Aldrich and Veronica Hardy. We picked Veronica Hardy, who ended up winning a 29-28 unanimous decision over J.J. Aldrich. Now, the first two rounds, the first 10 minutes was basically the same story. Veronica Hardy was the slicker and faster striker on the feet. J.J. really didn't have anything for her in the striking department. Veronica was just too quick. She was landing some nice combinations. And the one thing that JJ was successful in was pushing Hardy up against the cage and garnering some control time there, but nothing really happened for JJ in those first two rounds. But that third round was a different story. Aldrich landed a big shot that put Veronica Hardy down on the mat, and then she followed up, got on top of her, and started doing some work there. I think Hardy hung on to a submission for like 2 minutes of that third round. But regardless, the first two rounds went to Veronica Hardy. JJ did kind of bounce back in that third round. If she was able to finish Veronica after that knockdown in the third, that would have been great for her. But she ended up losing the fight because of the first 10 minutes. And it was a nice win for Veronica Hardy. She's now, since her return to the UFC, I think she's on a 3-fight win streak. So she's been killing it, only 28 years old as well, so I'm excited to see what's next for her. We started off the night with a dub in terms of picks. Now, there was the Kevin Doucette Jared Gooden fight never ended up materializing. I think there was like a weight issue with Jared Gooden. I'm not 100% sure, but regardless, that means the second fight was Charles Energy Johnson going up against Jake Hadley. Charles Johnson was the hometown guy, and there is, like, obviously that speculation. Sometimes the hometown guy gets favored if the fight ends up going to a decision. Now, Charles Johnson did win a unanimous 29-28 decision victory over Jake Hadley, but I think that was the right call. The first round, I believe, was Jake Hadley. There wasn't really much going on either side. It was a real feeler round for sure for both men, but Charles Johnson really didn't give much output. Jake Hadley had a little bit more on the striking and everything like that. So there's no way you could give that first round to Charles Johnson. But after fantastic corner work from Charles Johnson's team, he came out with more urgency in that second and third round and put it on Hadley in terms of volume. I think in that second round, Charles Johnson landed a nice right straight down the pipe that dropped Jake Hadley, and unfortunately, Charles Johnson wasn't able to get a finish for his home crowd, but because Jake Hadley grabbed them while they were on the ground, Jake Hadley had great defense there to survive after getting dropped. But after a somewhat low volume on both ends, first round that went to Jake Hadley, Charles Johnson turned it up in the last 10 minutes of the fight, dropped Jake Hadley in the second. It kind of cruised to a win in that third as well. So that's a 2 wins in a row now for Charles Johnson. I'm super excited for him because he mentioned at the interview after his fight in the octagon, he mentioned he's like more of a 5-round fighter. So he tends to start off extremely slow, which obviously isn't going to play in his favor in a 3-round setting. But he does realize this, so hopefully he continues his success. Hopefully he can come out a little stronger in his fights so he doesn't have to worry about dropping the first 5 minutes and then winning the last two. Regardless, we ended up going with Charles Johnson as the underdog in this fight, and we ended up getting that pick correct as well. So let's move on to the next fight, which was Billy Goff going up against Trey Waters. Now, this fight, I picked Billy Goff as the underdog, and Trey Waters ended up getting the win. Now, I try not to be biased in terms of how I thought a decision should play out when I do have a specific pick, which I have a pick in every fight, but I genuinely thought that Billy Goff won this fight. Now, people are going to say that Trey Waters was landing the more effective strikes, all this stuff, because he was landing. They were both landing on each other quite a bit, but I could argue that Billy Goff's shots looked to be affecting Trey Waters a lot more than Waters' shots on Goff were. Goff was moving forward the entire fight. He actually landed more strikes in each round than Trey Waters did, if I remember the strike count correctly when I watched the stats pop up on the screen during the fight. And two judges gave Trey Waters a 30-27 in that fight, which is absurd. There is no chance. I don't understand how this wasn't a split decision win. Both guys were landing heavy on each other. Both had high volume. Billy Goff was trying to mix in the takedowns and the clinch work as well, but Goff was pushing the pace the entire fight. He looked to be landing the more damaging strikes, and he landed more throughout that fight. And for two judges to not even give him one round it's insanity, in my opinion. It was a fantastic fight. It's probably fight of the night. There was a lot of back and forth. These guys were full steam ahead the entire 15 minutes. I disagreed with the decision, especially a unanimous 30-27 for Trey Waters. That's insane. I know I've said it like 4 times already, but I just couldn't believe hearing that scorecard. I think Billy Goff got screwed out of a win here. That's bias aside, because I did have him as an underdog in this fight, but that's all right, I guess. For Billy Goff, I'm sure it isn't, because he got chunned out of a win, but fantastic fight from a fight fan to watch. If I didn't have a specific pick on this, well, regardless, even though I did pick Goff, it was a fantastic fight to watch from the moment it started all the way to the end of that 15 minutes. That was a great scrap. I'm excited that the St. Louis crowd got to see it and it wasn't wasted at the UFC Apex. Next up, we had a women's strawweight bout going up. It was Tabitha Ricci going up against Tisha Pennington, who made her return after becoming a mother and 2 years out of the sport. And this is one of those controversial-ish decisions. I was on Twitter in between all the fights as much as I could, and I saw a lot of people saying that Ricci was gifted a win here. So I do want to talk about this because I had Ricci in this fight. She ended up winning. I can understand why people are leaning the Pennington side for this. In the first round, I would give it to Tisha. She was pushing the pace the whole time. She was landing way better strikes than Tabitha Ricci was in that first round. She was keeping a nice pace, and she was on the gas basically the entire first 5 minutes. So I did give that opening round to Tisha, but that second round, even though Tabitha Ricci didn't really do much in the sense of damage, she controlled Tisha up against that cage for what seemed to like 3 to 4 minutes, and they were both going back and forth when it was, for the minimal amount of time that it was on the feet, they were going back and forth. It was closely contested after that first round, so you can't really give it to Tisha in that second round. I know we despise control time and that being the way that the judges score it, but they go with control and all that other stuff after. So, like, obviously damage is the most important, but when there isn't a definitive side in terms of damage, you have to go to the other criteria. So, that second round, I would argue, is obviously for Tabitha Ricci because Tisha wasn't able to mount any sort of offense because, like, 80% of that second round was Tabitha Ricci controlling her up against the cage. Now, that third round was a lot. Tabitha Ricci did have some more success clinching up against the fence, which obviously we don't want to see, but that was a nice and back and forth exchange in that third round as well. So, I mean, if it could have been a split decision, I guess, but the thing that I didn't understand was you see the striking numbers, and I'm pretty sure in terms of total strikes, I looked at it this morning, Tabitha Ricci outstruck Tisha by 2 total strikes. So, yes, Tisha did land more significant strikes. I believe that did come down to that first round, but I don't understand how you scream like an absolute robbery, people were saying online, because Tabitha Ricci was dishing out as much as she was taking as well. Plus, she was garnering that control time. Also, I guess it could have been a split decision. It came down to that third round, so however you ended up scoring it, in my opinion, I'm obviously not upset because it ended up going in our favor for Tabitha Ricci. I am interested to see what your guys' thoughts on it were, so make sure to comment down below what your thoughts were on this specific fight. But nevertheless, it did end with a Tabitha Ricci decision victory, so we got another one right on the evening. So this next one, Terrence McKinney, Esteban Ribovics, this was insanity. Ribovics head kick, one of the cleanest head kick knockouts I've seen in a while, puts McKinney out in 37 seconds. There was McKinney was looking fast as he usually does on the feet. He was going in and out, but there was an exchange where he landed on Ribovics, and Ribovics he threw some combos up top, and then he finished it with a right head kick that landed square on the face of McKinney, and it sat him down. The guy was up against the cage, just completely out. Now, everybody that was on either side of this fight, you either thought McKinney was going to put Ribovics away in that first round, or Ribovics would have to weather that storm and then finish off McKinney in the second or third round. That's how I thought it was going to go. I was on the side of Ribovics, so I was very happy with that result for him. I did not expect it to be in the first 40 seconds of that fight. What an incredible head kick. And now we got to talk about Ribovics. Is McKinney just has he completely fallen off and he's just not what he used to be, or is Ribovics showing that he's that good? A lot of McKinney's opponent's success have come from weathering that initial storm and then waiting for McKinney's cardio to fail him and eventually putting him away later on in that fight. Ribovics did not need to weather anything. This guy did not shy away. He wasn't afraid of the explosiveness from McKinney. I don't know why I did air quotes. McKinney is very explosive, especially early on, but he didn't shy away. He wasn't afraid to get in the pocket with McKinney, and it ended up paying dividends for him. The guy knocked him out so cleanly. Beautiful head kick KO for Ribovics. I am super excited to see what's next for him. I don't know what's next for McKinney. Maybe the guy takes some time off because that was a brutal head kick. We move on. Chase Hooper up against Vyacheslav Borshchev. Now, this was one of two fights that I was very surprised about. Chase Hooper is insane. I don't know if this guy finally he's obviously building into that frame now. You can see he's been putting on muscle. His work ethic is fantastic. But this guy, so let's backtrack. This is a striker versus grappler matchup, or so we thought. We had the grappler on the Chase Hooper side, and we had a Russian and world kickboxing champion in Borshchev on the other side. So when we broke down this fight, we said if you think that Hooper can get those takedowns, and if you think that he can land those takedowns, then you'd probably go with Hooper finding a submission. Now, if you think Borshchev could defend those takedowns, you probably go Borshchev by KO. But boy, were we all completely wrong about Chase Hooper. Yes, I'm sure there were people on Chase Hooper's side, and there were people on the Borshchev side. But in terms of how the fight played out, I don't think anybody predicted that. I believe it was in the first 40 seconds. Chase Hooper was not shying away from exchanging on the feet with Borshchev, which was crazy to see. The kid's confidence must be through the roof. He threw a huge looping left hook that landed square on Vyacheslav Borshchev and put him on his ass. And then for the rest of that first round, Chase Hooper just mauled him. Absolutely mauled him on the mat. Put him in. He was in top mount, full mount, I should say, multiple times throughout that. I don't know how Borshchev survived that onslaught, but he ended up just absolutely mauling him in that first round. Second round comes, same thing, except he didn't knock down Borshchev. He came in, blitzed forward, and because Borshchev now has to worry about that strength and the striking of Hooper because he just got laid out in that first round, he was defending and backing up in a straight line, and that gave Hooper the ability to go and grab that double leg and take down Borshchev. And then between some grappling exchanges and some scrambles, Hooper does what Hooper does and ended up getting a Darce choke to finish off Borshchev. Now, Borshchev was complaining about not tapping because I don't want to say premature because it did look like he went for like a single tap on the back. I don't know what they consider. I don't know what they consider a full tap. If it has to be multiple times or what it is, but I honestly am not upset about that decision to stop the fight, regardless of the tap, because you couldn't imagine that it would go any different. Hooper was annihilating Borshchev. Like that, like I was so shocked to see how that fight played out. Good for Chase Hooper. I'm gonna start putting some respect on the kid's name. He's clearly developing his skills and he's learning on the job. He's only 24 years old and he looked like a world beater in that fight. Borshchev only landed 2 strikes over an 8-minute fight, and Hooper landed over 100. I don't know how Borshchev lasted that long. That fight could have stopped multiple times in that first round. That was incredible. An incredible performance by Chase Hooper. We were on the Borshchev side, and I could not have looked any sillier picking Borshchev by KO. But that's the fight game, man. Hooper came in with a clear game plan and just annihilated Borshchev. There's no other way to put it. Fantastic win for Hooper. Next up, we have, I think this was to start off the main card, Waldo Cortes-Acosta went up against Rebellis Despaigne, and here is another crazy upset. It wasn't as exciting as the Hooper upset, but I picked Waldo Cortes-Acosta as the plus 200 underdog going up against the killer in Rebellis Despaigne. Now, a lot of people were very, very confident in Rebellis, and for good reason. The guy looked like an absolute killer going into this matchup. For me, the reason I picked Waldo, it's not necessarily not necessarily because I think Waldo is a world beater and he could eventually, who knows? You never know how the heavyweight division is going to play out because we all know the skill level isn't the highest. But going into this fight, I couldn't trust Rebellis Despaigne, and that's why I went with Waldo. I knew that I've seen Waldo enough in the UFC to trust him more than somebody that was in the octagon for a combined 37 seconds over his last 4 fights before this one. Yes, he does look like he hits incredibly hard, and I'm sure he does. It's just, at what level was he doing that at? So the 3 fights prior to his UFC debut, it was 3 seconds, 4 seconds, and then 7 seconds or something like that. So incredible. Clearly the guy's got power. But then he goes into this UFC debut against Josh Parisian. Josh Parisian, in my opinion, is not UFC caliber. And he was able to finish him in I don't even know, 11 or 13 or whatever seconds it was. So, and obviously that Josh Parisian. Did I say Zach Parisian? Josh Parisian is what I mean to say. He, like I said, not UFC caliber. They clearly put that matchup together because they wanted to build up this new, exciting, heavy-hitting prospect for the heavyweight division. It's just I think they made a mistake putting him up against Waldo. Waldo was able to, quote-unquote, fraud check him. He ate the shots that Rebellis did land. He clinched him up and got those takedowns. Ended up just pummeling him for 15 minutes straight. Despaigne's gas tank seemed to be an issue. And that was the big reason why I picked Waldo. There was just too many uncertainties on the Rebellis side. Yes, he could have landed that big shot and we would be singing a different tune right now, but he didn't. He ended up gassing out. He had nothing to offer off of his back. He couldn't work his way back to his feet. Waldo came in with the perfect game plan to go up against somebody like Despaigne and ended up getting the win. Now, I haven't really seen much of it, but the thing is, people are going to hate on Waldo's performance because it's not exciting. He ended up just wrestling him the whole time, blah, 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 blah. But there's no winning in this sport. MMA fans are hilarious because if Waldo came in and tried to prove some weird point about being able to stand with this absolute monster human being of Rebellis Despaigne, and he ended up getting caught and knocked out, people are going to be like, Waldo's so stupid. Why would he try to strike with Rebellis? Doesn't he know how dangerous Despaigne is? He should have wrestled. So if he did that, there's no winning. If he goes out like he did and wrestled him for 15 minutes and took the path to least resistance to beat and nullify that power from Rebellis, people are going to be like, oh, he's boring, blah, 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 blah. Regardless, I'm very happy that we went with that Waldo pick. A lot of people were super confident in the Rebellis Despaigne side for And it's crazy to me that you could be so confident on such an unproven mixed martial artist. But regardless, we got that pick right. Big underdog there. Let's move on. Next up, we had Alex Caceres going up against Mike Wazowski, a.k.a. Sean Woodson. Now, I had to rewatch this fight because this is where it started kicking in, and I wasn't able to really focus on the fights as much. And I wanted to get a perspective on the fight where I wasn't so hammed. But anyway, so I rewatched this fight today. In that first round, from what I remember, well, throughout this whole fight, Sean Woodson was landing the cleaner strikes. He was landing flush on Caceres, and Caceres was able to find the mark a few times against Sean, but Woodson's defense and his tricky, like the way he twitches when he's striking like that, it's just so hard to pick up reads against him. He's very slick with the rolls and the movement, and his length is really tricky to get into that pocket to actually land those strikes. So in the first 10 minutes, you could see that Caceres was struggling in that department. Caceres did really turn it up in that third, and I do agree that Alex Caceres won that third round, but I think the movement, the ranginess, and the ability to land cleaner strikes in those first 2 rounds is really what won Sean Woodson this fight. I do not think it was a robbery in any way. I don't think it had anything to do with the fact that he was from St. Louis. Those first 2 rounds, definitely Woodson rounds. Like I said, Caceres couldn't really find the mark. Sean Woodson's defense, his movement, and his ranginess, and the ability to land cleaner strikes won him those first 2 rounds. But I will give that third round to Caceres. He did turn it up. He was landing better. He was more in Sean's face, and he was looking good in that third round. If he was able to figure it out a little earlier on in that fight, he could have arguably won. But first 2 rounds went to Woodson. Third round goes to Caceres. And I think they got it right. Great win for Mike Wazowski. Now, next up, here is the second fight that was the most shocking for me. We had Diego Ferreira going up against Mateusz Rebecki. Mateusz really needed that finish in the first round. And he put Ferreira on his ass in that first round, but he couldn't finish because Ferreira has a great ground game, and he was able to, after getting knocked down by Rebecki, he was able to stay safe in his guard, play that game off of his back, stay safe and not get finished. But Rebecki was landing heavily in that first round and almost took Ferreira out of there. Now, the thing is, the pace that Ferreira was able to keep up with Rebecki at 39 years old, it leaves you in awe. It was incredible to see that Rebecki at 31, arguably in his physical prime, wasn't able to keep up with a 39-year-old Diego Ferreira that is clearly out of his prime. But you before this fight, you would say he was clearly out of his prime, but he looked phenomenal in that fight. Ferreira's chin was his best friend in that first round, especially because those shots from Rebecki were landing so flush, and Rebecki's a powerhouse of a human being. So the fact that Ferreira's chin was able to hold up was the deciding factor in this fight. Ferreira started turning it up in the second and third round, and he even finished Rebecki in the last 10 seconds of that third round. I honestly don't even think he needed the finish. I think he clearly won round 2. He clearly won round 3. Rebecki was just too tired. He had nothing to really offer other than wild looping strikes. He did land some solid takedowns though, but Ferreira's ground game is just so good. He was able to nullify anything that Rebecki wanted to do on the ground. Ended up getting back to it. It was an incredible performance. Rebecki's eyes ended up being swollen shut. It looked like he was crying tears of blood. The way he got dismantled by Diego. That is a fantastic win, and that was the third loss that we had on the entire night up to this point. Now, I guess I didn't really say who I had in the previous fights, but if you guys watched my breakdown video, you'll know. We'll recap it at the end of this, but that was a fantastic win for Diego. I thought that Rebecki was just going to be able to run through him, and a lot of people, the sports books did as well. This was the biggest betting favorite on the entire card, but what a win for Ferreira. He's most likely going to be back in the octagon, and after that performance, I'm excited to see him again. That was crazy. Going up the card, it was Carlos Ulberg going up against Alonzo Menifield. And this fight, I did not think would end like this. 12-second knockout for Carlos Ulberg. We had Ulberg to win, but I did not think it was going to be that fast. They touched gloves. Menifield charged in immediately like a tank, landed a little bit on Ulberg, but Ulberg was able to kind of back away. He slipped over to the left, I believe. Anyway, he slipped over. I don't know if Menifield like tripped into the fence or if Ulberg like kind of caught him a little bit that caused him to fall, but Ulberg slipped out. Menifield landed into the fence, and as he turned around, Ulberg snapped one on him. Menifield hits the canvas with his knees, and as he's getting back up, Ulberg lands like 2, 3, 4 as Menifield's getting back up to his feet, and then he backed against the cage. One bomb of a left puts Menifield out and gets KO'd in 12 seconds. That was an incredible performance by Carlos Ulberg. This guy is most likely going to be ranked now. He'll take Menifield's ranking most likely at number 11. I'm just super excited to see what this guy's going to do in the light heavyweight division. The guy looked incredible. I don't know what's next for Menifield. He's going to be 36. He's 36 now, maybe even 37 by the time we see him again. What a performance by Ulberg there. Let's move on to the co-main event of Joaquin Buckley against Nursultan Ruziboev. Now, we had Joaquin Buckley in his hometown here, and there was nothing shady about this decision whatsoever. Buckley came in here and was doubted by a lot of analysts. They thought I think that Nursultan is a fantastic fighter. He's very dangerous, but I think he should stay at middleweight. He looked kind of small. Like, obviously, height-wise, he's big. He towered over Buckley in that matchup, but in terms of his frame, he looked too small for welterweight. So I think he should stay at middleweight. He looked way better. I don't know if he was just too quick of a turnaround for him. I don't know if it was like a weight cut issue. He didn't look to seem like it was a weight cut issue, but Buckley came in the first round, does what he does. He has that nice shifty boxing style that he throws heavy and he kind of is in and out. Buckley was able to land some powerful takedowns in that first round especially. Ruziboev did find success with those knees. He threatened that knee multiple times throughout the fight because of Buckley's takedowns, and he did land it, I believe, in that first round. So it was kind of like a little sketchy. I didn't know exactly what was going to happen if Buckley got smoked with one of those knees. He probably would have gotten put out, but Buckley did a great job staying safe. He powered his way through takedowns, had some nice ground and pound as well in that first round. In that second round, it was more of a striking affair. Still some great work on the mat as well. Buckley was Ruziboev had no chance of defending any of these takedowns. The explosiveness from Buckley for those takedowns was incredible to watch. And in that third round, Buckley was able to drop Ruziboev with like a 3-punch combination. He hit him with the right, a nice square on the face with the left, and as Ruziboev's like backing up hurt, he lands another left that puts him down. I think he might have actually put him down a second time in that third round as well. But there was a few times that Buckley was in Ruziboev's guard, and it was twice. The first time they didn't say anything, but he was throwing up kicks, like, and push kicks from his back when Buckley was on the mat with his knees. He was in his guard, and Ruziboev was throwing these illegal up kicks. So the first time Keith Peterson didn't do anything. I believe it was Keith Peterson, if I'm not mistaken, the ref. But in the third round, he was throwing axe kicks from his back, landing on Buckley. They stopped they timed out to see if Buckley was okay, all this stuff. I don't think it even like fully flush landed on Buckley's head, but this guy is axe kicking a grounded opponent like Ruziboev was. It was insane to watch. I don't know if Ruziboev was trying to just end the fight. He didn't want to be there anymore. I don't know what it was. That was insane to watch, but that was a great performance by Buckley. He seems to be a real problem in this welterweight division. This is now 4 wins in a row at 170. I've been a big fan of Buckley for a while, especially his move down to welterweight. I thought it was a great decision. I've picked him in every single one of his welterweight fights so far, including this one, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do next. Hopefully they push him up against the rankings a little bit, or up the rankings, I should say. I think they put him up against Ruziboev here in this particular matchup, because if you guys remember back at UFC 300, he crashed the press conference and he told Dana, he's like, dude, put me on that St. Louis card for my hometown fans. He's been wanting to go there. He called his shot. He made the co-main event spot against Ruziboev, and he showed out for his hometown of St. Louis. I'm very excited. I'm very happy that he got that win, and that's another W in the pick column for us as well. A nice unanimous decision victory for Joaquin Buckley. Now we move on to the main event of Derek Lewis and Rodrigo Nascimento. Now, at this point of the night, I was absolutely dusted. I do not remember watching any part of this fight other than the finish. Maybe a few glances. I did not rewatch this fight, but I believe Derek Lewis won by third round knockout in typical Derek Lewis fashion. I saw some moments where Rodrigo was on top of Lewis on the mat. I think there was a few occasions where Derek Lewis was in top position on the mat as well. I could be completely wrong. Like I said, I was absolutely dusted at this point of the night, but I did watch a fat overhand right plant on Nascimento's head, put him down to the mat, and then Derek Lewis just finishes him off, takes off his shorts, starts swinging them in typical Derek Lewis fashion. And he gets the KO. We had Derek Lewis by KO in this fight. I thought it would be much earlier on in the fight, not necessarily the third round. I'm pretty sure it was the third round. Like I said, guys, I was gone at this point of the evening. But we ended up getting another pick. So, we ended up getting another pick correct. Fantastic win for Derek Lewis. Obviously, it wasn't as easy as I thought it would have been. I didn't think Nascimento had the ability to defeat Lewis. We talked about it. I didn't even think Nascimento would have as much success as he did on the mat against Lewis. But nevertheless, we got this pick right. I'm happy for Derek Lewis. He's always a fan favorite. The guy's an absolute beauty, and I'm happy he got the knockout victory. So we ended up going 9-3 on picks for UFC St. Louis. In my breakdown video, we talked about how I'm not going to, I'm going to watch some tape, but I'm not going to be so nitpicky and, analyze everything so technically and try to convince myself to one side or the other. I'm going to go more of what I've already seen these fighters do, more of a gut and instinctual pick, because I've been watching MMA long enough to try to just already have that prior knowledge. I don't need to nitpick every single detail. If I'm unfamiliar with the fighters, I will break down some tape, and I will still watch previous fights when I'm making my decisions. But it seemed to have worked for me today, or for this Saturday, for this event. We went 9-3 on picks, and we'll recap that really quickly. So we chose Veronica Hardy here, nice unanimous decision win. We chose Charles Johnson, another nice unanimous decision victory. This fight, I am salty about. I genuinely thought, no bias aside, I thought Goff won, and he definitely did not lose all three of those rounds. Regardless, we got this pick incorrect. Tabitha Ricci, kind of a sketchy decision, I guess you could say. I'm happy about the outcome, though, because we ended up getting that pick correct as well. Esteban Ribovics, another great call on our part. It didn't play out like we thought. We thought maybe the finish would come in that second round, but 37 seconds. What a beautiful head kick. This one, another one that I got incorrect. Chase Hooper, what an animal, dude. Oh my goodness. We had Borshchev here. Chase Hooper is a real menace. He looked like an absolute killer. It was insane to watch. We had Waldo Cortes-Acosta in this matchup as the underdog. Another great pick on our side. We had Mike Wazowski here. Nice dub for Sean Woodson. Love that. That's 6 correct so far. This fight, another one. Rebecki was winning. He won that first 5 minutes. Like I said, I don't even think Ferreira needed that KO in the third, late in that third. I think he won the rounds 2 and 3 really clearly, but we got this one wrong as well. Ulberg, 12-second KO. Had Ulberg to win this fight as well. Buckley we had in his hometown to get the dub. It looked like he was going to be able to finish Ruziboev in that third regardless. A nice solid win for him. And then we had Derek Lewis to finish Nascimento by KO as well. Might not have played out exactly like we wanted, but 9-3 is a solid record in terms of picks. Now, I will be dropping a future matchups video later on, hopefully tomorrow, but I haven't really had a chance to look at the important fights in the important fighters and see what's next for them. I will take a look after the rankings are updated tomorrow, and we're going to talk about some future matchups. And make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I will be dropping a breakdown video for the fights this weekend as well, so stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining me once again, everybody. I will see you in the next video.